By the way, Lori.
We're live. Hey, Brian. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Innovate HPE MOOC Season 2. This is the first of 2 remaining episodes on Season 2. We have built the whole season around the book Hacking Leadership by our 2018 keynote speaker, Joe Sanfilippo, and his co-author, Tony Sinanis. Tony will be closing out the season next week. We do have a date change on that. That'll be happening May 6th on Sunday at 5 o'clock. Tony had something come up, so we are going to broadcast him next Sunday live if you want to join us live. And if not, the recording will be posted right afterwards. And it's been a great season so far. I've been enjoying the Twitter chats on Thursday nights. Speaking of Twitter chats, after each episode on Thursday night at 8 p.m., we do the hashtag HackLead Twitter chat, 6 questions, 50 minutes. And we love to hear your answers to share your learning from this episode, previous episodes, and things going on at your school. Because when we all collaborate, we all learn, and we all get better. And I know I've said it every episode this season, but I just wanted to reiterate, the book is built, it's called Hacking Leadership, and I see leadership kind of as a universal topic. Superintendents lead principals, principals lead teachers, teachers lead students, and students can even lead each other. So leadership is universal, and you can apply it to whatever facet of life that you are in our educational field. And we thank you again for being with us tonight. We have a fantastic guest with us tonight. She comes to us from the Littlestown School District in Pennsylvania. I believe it's called Director of Curriculum and Technology is your title, Lori, but you can correct me in a few minutes. And we'd like to welcome to the show tonight with my co-host Brian Robinson tonight. Lori Stollar is with us tonight. Say hello, Lori.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
So Lori's going to take a few minutes and introduce herself in just a minute. Just to let you know, Jessica Piccone-Cook, who is usually with us tonight hosting, is in San Antonio. Her husband got her a week in culinary school in San Antonio for Christmas. That is a first time I've ever heard of a gift like that. So I hope she's on the last episode so we can hear what she's going to make us in celebration of this season. And co-hosting tonight with me, of course, one of the most talented young principals I know at Cumberland Valley High School. He is Brian Robinson. Brian?
Well, just because I'm the only young principal doesn't make me, doesn't take anything away from the introduction. So thanks, Todd. Happy to be here.
You're welcome. So, Lori, if you could just take a few minutes and kind of let us know your background, and then we'll start firing away on the topics for tonight.
Sure. So, as you said, I'm the Director of Curriculum and Technology for the Littlestown Area School District. Went there as the Director of Curriculum, and then it sort of is, oh, by the way, you can also be the Director of Technology. So the job went from this to this, but that's okay. I'm enjoying every minute of it. Prior to Littlestown, I served in the IU-12 region as the curriculum specialist. So I served all 25 districts across York, Adams, and Franklin County. And I would say that's where I really learned a lot about curriculum and about how schools operate on a much larger scale. Prior to that, 20 years in the high school classroom as a social studies teacher. Also, worked through at that time, we didn't really have a teacher leader position per se, but was the department chair and did a lot of other district initiative type things. So 20 years there, and the IU now at Littlestown, and actually do some adjunct work for Shippensburg University in their Ed Leadership program.
Thanks for the introduction, Lori. And as someone who not only survived, but also thrived and learned in your classroom, I certainly appreciate what you brought to the classroom as an adjunct. Let's get right into it. We don't have any softballs here. In the book Hacking Leadership, it's a lot about involving different stakeholders, and a key stakeholder in education is, of course, teachers. Although oftentimes they aren't part of that decision-making process. Thinking back to your days in the classroom, how did you reach out to your leadership teams to try to be a part of any decision-making that occurred?
So I think the traditional way, as I mentioned, was through being a department chair and working with that group. And really that, while no one called it the Guiding Coalition, that team really did do a lot of the decision making. We were working under a superintendent who believed in site-based management. So a lot of decisions did come to the building. And being part of that group was one way to show leadership. I think I was one who volunteered for a lot of opportunities. Probably, well, not probably, I really am dating myself if I go back to the fact that there was a grassroots movement to move to block schedule. And it was a matter of volunteering to be part of the committee and really working to iron out all the details of what that would look like. We were one of the pioneers in block scheduling in this region. So I think it's a matter of wanting to give back and find ways to help be part of that that leadership group.
So Lori, just to piggyback off of that a little bit, so would you say like advice you would have for teachers with that would be just like to really seek out opportunity and ask leadership, either district leadership or principals, like what committee work can I do? What can I do to be a part of this process? Because I think that's, I mean, I live in this little utopian world where all of us as educators just get better because we want to get better and reach out to our PLNs. Mine happens to be on Twitter and with colleagues at school. But like, is that what you would, if you were giving advice to young teachers, is that kind of the direction you'd go with that?
Absolutely. You have to look for ways to be involved. And I want to think that education has gotten past the whole close your door and the silos. While we know that still does happen, I'd like to think it happens far less than it used to. I guarantee you that in a high school, a small high school where I worked, there were probably people who didn't really even know each other's names. If you weren't in the same department, they didn't really, know who the other person was. So I think you have to look for opportunities, but I think principals and superintendents and other district leaders also can look for those nuggets in people and encourage them. I'm certainly where I am today in part because of people who perhaps saw something in me, maybe even something I didn't see in myself at first, and encouraged me to get involved and to do things, and who took me along to, a conference or a committee meeting, a local education organization, and get me involved in education in that way too. So trying to move beyond the classroom walls. That was before, we could all, be on Twitter and connect that way.
Yeah. So continuing, so switching your hat then for a minute as a leader of a district leadership yourself, I'd assume your position's at the cabinet level in your.
Correct.
So how do you involve other educators or even students in the decision-making process in your district? What are some things that you do to pull them in or, kind of identify talents and strengths?
It's a good question. One thing that we did in our district several years ago was step away from the traditional department chair or subject area lead and really looked for teachers that we could put in a role of a teacher leader. Now, I have to say that there's a little bit of a local autonomy within the building. So some of the buildings look more traditional than others, but the idea that there are people in the buildings who can be part of a group or a sounding group. And we've been working, the superintendent actually has been working with them to help develop their leadership skills. Very much looking for like career ladders within the district. So very small steps, I think, but certainly I see that as a step towards helping give people a voice in the process.
Lori, it sounds like you guys are differentiating even within your district. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about how you balance that need to differentiate, for different buildings and different staff members with the need to maintain the integrity of your district goals and initiatives.
Well, I think certainly your district goals and initiatives, you have to keep those in the forefront, no matter what you're doing. Everything we do, we go back to what are our goals and how is this going to help us get there? So whether it's a teacher leader group, whether it's a grade level group, whether it's a group of interested teachers or staff members who volunteer for something that we offer, you have to keep the district goals and benchmarks out in front. You know, we certainly know where we're going, and like where we want to be by 2020, and we just continue to really chip away at that. And how are we going to get there? What are we doing? How will this help us attain that goal? I don't know if that answered your question, Brian.
Yeah.
Well, I think so. And just to kind of go off a little bit on that, do you think that if we asked staff and students in your district, would they, well, certainly staff, hopefully, would they understand what that goal is?
Oh, they better. Our superintendent very much is about communicating, and he visits each school staff, and we only have 3 buildings, so it's very different than Cumberland Valley. But he's in each building 3 times a year to give them an update, certainly the beginning of the year, the middle, and the end of the year, state of the district update. He's on Twitter. He started about a month ago to videotape after each board meeting. He does like a 2-minute highlight. He puts that out on Facebook and Twitter. If you're not using social media these days, you know, you're not helping yourself. So I'd say the message is out there. It's in the newsletter. It's on social media. We have a deal with a local merchandiser where 3 times a year, the merchandiser gets wrapped in a cover page that's all from the school district. So you've got to get that message out there. So I think our people hear it. You've got to always come back to what is our, you know, what are our goals? What's our vision? What are our goals? How are we going to get there? So it's keeping it front and center is so important. If you don't do that, if it's just that dusty binder that sits on a shelf, that's just a waste of someone's time to write a comprehensive plan if you don't use it.
Right, and if you don't keep everybody connected to those district goals, I almost feel like you could almost be like your own version of the Thousand Islands. I mean, everybody kind of does their own thing, their way, and their own little world. And so, yeah, that's super important.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing that. So let's shift gears for a minute over to professional development and your approach. And, you know, in professional development, I feel like from my years in education, it's one of those things where, like, if you ask 20 people about how they do professional development, you might get 18 answers. And because there's just so many approaches, from in-service days to common planning time, and some districts do early dismissals on a regular basis, summer ed camps, and on and on and on. What's your district's approach to PD? And then do you allow staff members, this one's straight out of the book, do you allow staff members to work on passion projects for PD? So maybe the first part we talk about district approach to PD, and then maybe we can hit on the passion projects for staff members.
Okay, so obviously in-service days are a necessary evil. Maybe you can look at them that way. It's about how you use them. So I guess there's always that render unto Caesar. There's so many state initiatives or state mandates right now that, you know, suicide awareness, and you have your mandated reporter and the opioid training, and the list just seems to grow and grow and grow. So sometimes we have to do those things. And then, of course, you know, a year for us coming up, for instance, we're switching to a new student information system. Well, that's going to be some time as well. However, put that in a bucket. You know, we have to do those type things. We've been looking for professional development that fits with our mission, vision, and goals. And we've, you know, partnered with a group. It has to do with our benchmark assessments. You know, we use NWEA, so we've been using them to come in and do professional development. I think what's important about professional development is we know the one-time sit and get doesn't work. Right. So while we have a multi-year project with this company, not only are they coming in on professional development days, but they also come and coach in between. So that would be one approach, is how we use in-service days. I think you both know, because we had, you know, mentioned it when we talked prior, that our district also believes in the power of job-embedded professional development. So each building has time built in daily for collaboration time. And I see that as a way and an avenue into professional development. We also offer lots of opportunities throughout the year and over the summer, using online formats, prepackaged courses that we put out to teachers and let them opt in. And of course, one of the days in our calendar is a flex day. So if they do 7.5 hours prior to Martin Luther King Day, then that's a day they don't report. So we've tried to mix it up a little bit while acknowledging some of the things you have to do, because the state says some of those things that are managerial, like a new student information system, and yet allowing for other opportunities that we think will benefit our mission, vision, and goals. So, passion project. Can't hear you.
Shoot, there we go. Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
I lost Brian for a little bit, so I'll just kick back in. But I wanted to ask that collaboration piece where you said teachers have daily collaboration. It sounded like something maybe we called it common planning time. It was kind of a period where everybody's off at the same time to collaborate. Do you find teachers connect on that passion project and work on that 20% piece, like that 20% time that Google talks about, where you can work on anything you want, as long as it's related to education?
Not yet. So we're using that collaboration time in a very structured way right now, around student data, using a cycle of looking at the data, coming up with an action plan to address the students' needs, whether it's on grade level, whether it's intervention, whether it's enrichment. So coming up with that implementation plan of here's the data, set a goal, here's how we're going to attain it, then that check-in and go back. So we have this cycle, this data analysis and implementation cycle that we're heavy into. So during our collaboration time, our professional learning communities, 2 to 3 days a week, that's what teachers are doing. We would love to see them get to the point where they say, to reach this goal, we really need to learn more about guided reading. So we're going to do some, a deep dive into guided reading. Not sure if that maybe is their passion project, but I think a place for teachers to explore their passion would be through a differentiated supervision model, which we also have. So if you're not in a year of clinical observation, you can choose what your evaluation project, what your supervision project will be that year. And I think that would be a place where teachers can explore their passion.
Brian, are you still with us, or do you want me to jump ahead?
I'm back, but I don't know what you guys were up to. So why don't you take one more tab, and then I'll hop in.
Okay. So right now, Lori, the buzz around education for a long time was data-driven. And in Hacking Leadership, Joe and Tony both propose that PD should be data-informed, meaning that working with students is a complex, multi-pronged issue that involves a lot of things that aren't necessarily quantitative, that some of it's qualitative. How can an educator build a PD plan that is data-informed versus just like the straight-up data-driven? So kids got this on a test, the test must be good, the test must not be good, kids must be good, or kids must not be good. What would you say to that in the book, based on that statement in the book?
So I would say that certainly, the cycle that I shared with you that we use in collaboration time certainly starts with student data. A differentiated supervision plan in our district also starts with 2 things, a Danielson domain that you wish to work on and student data, and then where do you see yourself as a way to improve your practice. But you mentioned something interesting. You talked about qualitative data too. So I think it's important to look at those multiple measures of data, not just achievement data. So if you go back to Victoria Bernhardt's work and you look at multiple measures, she talks about looking at achievement data, school processing data, how we do school, demographic data, and then that perceptual data. And then looking at all four of those buckets when you're creating a plan, or whether it's your own professional development plan or whether it's a school level plan, we need to examine multiple levels. So I would challenge teachers to ask themselves what other data they have aside from achievement data, which is important, but it shouldn't be the be all end all.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
So Lori, when it comes to your teachers and professional development, I don't want to use the word accountability because it's a bad word, so let's use the word accountability. How do you keep them accountable for their professional learning? Do you guys use blogs, or do the teachers have portfolios? Is there a way that and I was kidding about the accountability part, but how do we allow the teachers to track their growth so they can share that with administrators or with themselves or with their peers?
So I think the potential exists, Brian, for instance, in that differentiated supervision model that I mentioned.
Yeah.
I think the challenge is, as an administrator, finding the time to be purposeful and to follow up with that mid-year check-in, whether the multiple check-ins, looking at what they're putting in their portfolio, and on the other side, for them to put it in the portfolio. So I can sit here and tell you it's all beautiful, rosy, differentiated supervision model.
Same here.
I have a feeling it's probably not being implemented to its full potential. But, teachers who are into professional learning, who really want to better their practice, they're going to do it. They're your front runners. They're out, they're leading the way. They're on Twitter. They're reading books. They're coming to me and saying, "Oh, did you see this app? Or have you heard about this? Or what about that?" It's the ones who aren't as passionate about their own professional learning that we probably need to be more worried about. And how do we help them realize their own potential?
Yeah, no, that's so important to help people realize their own potential. And it kind of goes back to that thing you said at the beginning. Somebody saw something in you that maybe you didn't see in yourself. And I guess that's the challenge as administrators, is to find that in, much like me as a teacher, I have to find that in my students and unlock something they don't see in themselves. I think it's important for administrators to move on up the chain to look for that in the people that you lead too.
Let me throw one more idea out, because I was sitting here thinking, as an administrator, it's so easy to get caught up in the paperwork or the report that has to be done, or making sure everything's ready for PIMS or a state assessment. And I'm fortunate that our district office is connected to our elementary building. So the other day, it was one of those where you just needed to get out of the office, and I picked up my iPad and I went out into the elementary school and I visited 5 classrooms and just, used our electronic evaluation tool just to leave a simple observation note in each walkthrough. And I felt so much better when I came back to my office because I had done that. And you see the great things that are happening in our classroom. So taking that to the teacher side, though, for instance, we have a teacher. You talk about a go-getter, someone who's motivated. She knows there's excellence going on in other classrooms. And she was inspired by the hashtag Observe Me challenge, where teachers who are willing to open their classrooms put us a sign. In our case, she made these bright pink signs with hashtag Observe Me. And if there's a sign on that door, people can go and visit. So
cool.
Opening the doors to one another. We have a very similar process in our middle school where we have a pineapple chart. Have you guys talked about pineapple charts this semester in your course? Not
this season, but those I know what they are, and that's a fantastic idea. I would love to explore that as a professional at some point.
Yeah, so our middle school they have a whiteboard in the front office, and they really just took painter's tape and just made a matrix with the periods down and the days of the week. And if you're doing something in your classroom that others may want to see and you're willing to open your door, you just put your name and your room number, on the chart, and then people know where they can visit that day. So lots of ways to get out there and grow your own professional practice. It doesn't have to be that formal sit and get. And, it's kind of sad that we think you have to be able to award Act 48 hours for it to count and be official, because a lot of that learning is organic, and it's going to happen because you see a great lesson in the room next to you.
Right. And I love what you're saying about getting out there into the classroom and posting that stuff in the system, but also, like, I've seen that stuff being posted. Administrators do walkthroughs and post things on Twitter, and such a great way to collaborate. I mean, I learned so much from just reading what other people are doing on Twitter, and I think it's hopefully many of the other people do as well. Just to jump ahead a little bit, so as a leader, sometimes when we do PD, we'll sit or meetings, we sit and we see certain staff members who are kind of disengaged, or maybe watching a game on stream or something like that, and not kind of fully engaged, or simply just wasting time during the day if we give them too much freedom. What's your approach to dealing with staff members like that who don't engage in the professional learning opportunities and kind of waste their time? What advice would you give to, like, other leaders in our state who are maybe dealing with that in their buildings?
I work with some terrific principals, and I would say that the scenario that you mentioned, I often see that being handled, if you will, at the building level. So you have to be bold enough and to really address it, because if you don't address it, it will continue to happen. So I think it's all about doing that in a private way. Certainly, we don't want to call people out, and I've seen, unfortunately, some poor administrators or poor leaders over time do things like that, calling people out in a meeting or what have you, which is just going to really continue, obviously, to push them the other way. But I think that reflecting as well on the experience and say, would I want to be a participant in this session, or would I rather sit with a stack of papers and grade them or read the newspaper or whatever. So I think it's both sides. That we certainly need teachers to be engaged, but we need to make sure we're providing relevant, authentic content that makes them want to be engaged.
I love that, honestly. Like, I do some presentations for my professional organization once in a while, and honestly, I'm the same way. When I see people disengage, I don't really take it as an insult. I kind of think about, like, what could I have done differently to engage that person, because they came here and obviously didn't get what they thought they were getting. So thank you for sharing that piece.
Yeah, speaking of professional development, oftentimes professional development seems like it's a one-time event. So you go, you get your topic, and then everyone forgets about it. George Couros said in a recent blog that maybe we should rename professional development and call it professional learning. So instead of thinking about a singular event, we think about it as a process. Can you talk a little bit about how your staff, or how you try to use professional development as an ongoing process? You had mentioned before about linking to your goals. Is there anything specific that you can talk about?
I'll mention two things, Brian. I think one thing, we try to keep it out front through Twitter, which I'm going to tie into the second thing, which is when we started our technology initiative 3 years ago, we brought on a technology integrator. So I think that having someone on staff who can support our teachers on a daily basis really makes a difference, and really speaks to the idea that professional learning is not a once and done. Because even if you are attentive and in tune, and you think you're sitting in a session and you think, oh, this is great, I can't wait to get into my classroom to try it, maybe the first time you try it, it doesn't go as planned, or you forget something, and having someone else to support you in that is critical. So if you don't have the benefit of a coach or a staff member who plays that role in your district, seeking out another professional who you can partner with and collaborate with would be important. But going back to the hashtag, so I've worked with our tech integrator in the last couple of weeks, and I'm like, we need a hashtag just for professional learning in this district. So I'd say about 3 weeks ago, we finally decided this is what we're going to do. And she's been pushing out this hashtag with lots of articles and obviously, like you said, pictures of people, in the district, what's going on in our classrooms. She also has a professional development. I guess that's a bad word now. I should say professional learning, but she has a website where she has lots of resources posted for our teachers. So sometimes those tweets with our hashtag really takes us back to a website that she continues to populate and update for our teachers. So that would be another way to make sure that the teachers have the supports they need to continue to hone their practice.
What is that hashtag, Lori?
Hashtag Bolts, because we are the Thunderbolts. Bolts learn.
Excellent.
Cool. All right, Lori, so technology is a segment of educating students that has a wide variety of skill levels, just because of, I think, there's still a lot of technological immigrants on staffs around the state and the country for that matter. Can you discuss the process that you use to understand what your staff needs and how you can connect them with mentors, some of the early adopters and the forward thinkers and the real front-end tech people, maybe with some of the immigrants who struggle a little bit with some of the simpler tasks. Can you talk about how you connect those people, or if you connect those people, and if not, maybe what you would do to connect those people?
Sure. I think the answer probably changes depending on the year, Todd. The first year that we introduced technology in our elementary school, we created a very, very small stipend to have one person in each grade level to be a conduit and a liaison to a committee and to our tech integrator, and sort of give us feedback and help us know what the teachers needed, and then to be a resource on the team. It wasn't every year, like I said, that was just the first year, but that was one foray into the teachers. Our tech integrator has done surveys to find out what teachers need, what they're interested in. And then she offers sessions for them. It's looked different in each building. When I say about the elementary school, that was 3 years ago. This year, when we're in our high school, it looks very different. And she spends a lot of time in the building. She observes classes. She co-plans with teachers. And I think when you're in the building and embedded with a staff, you really get a sense of what they need, and trying to remain cognizant of moving up that SAMR, model, because substitution is great for a first step. But if all you ever do with an iPad is to digitize a worksheet, then that's a really expensive worksheet. So how do we continue to ratchet it up and transform the learning experience with the technology?
So probably a way that you've done that, that Todd did a little bit of digging on you, and he did notice that you created a professional education committee at Littlestown. Can you talk about how that's enhanced the professional learning, and how it started, and how you've been able to track its progress?
Mm-hmm. So the professional ed committee is actually something that's required by state law. That you have a professional ed committee, and that you every 3 years that you're submitting to the state what your professional ed plan is for the district, and that includes parents and community members, business people, as well as teachers and whatnot. But moving outside of that, Brian, I would say that when we did our redesign at our middle school, before we introduced any technology, we identified a guiding coalition, and we would meet weekly to talk about what our middle school could look like, and to talk about what technology would be and how that could transform and change education. So that would be one example of creating a stakeholder group to help inform the process. Moving on, now we're into our third year of tech integration. We've just formed a teaching and learning advisory council, and this is what I'm excited about. This group's going to start, actually we meet on Thursday for our first meeting, but I kind of put out an all call, all teachers in the district, told them, you know, we're going to look at teaching and learning across the district, look at our goals, you know, chart our path, and this is a chance to really give input. And I threw it out there, and I was just so excited about the group of educators that responded. So they know they're in for a 15-month commitment. They know this is for them, they're going to be exploring teaching and learning and giving input and learning together for 15 months. Next year, this time, hopefully we'll have the group 2 to overlap with that group, and then a different group will continue on. So I see as a way for teachers to become leaders, to have a leadership role. I think the misconception is you have to be a leader. To be a leader, it's because of the role you're in, and everyone has something to offer. So I'm excited to really meet with this group of movers and shakers who volunteered to give us insight, their insights. You know, they're in the classroom. The further, you know, you're in the classroom, you're in the front office, you get to the district office, you get far away from it. So it's important to really stay connected with those people. They're on the ground, the boots on the ground, most important factor in the child's education. So listening to them, letting them share and work together to come up with ideas. I really see that as helping to shape and move the school forward.
That sounds great, and that's probably what Todd was telling me to ask you about.
I had no idea it was really a law. I knew that there were I knew we had one, but I had no idea it was a law. So
learn something new. That's how we got the professor.
Go back and research Act 48 and Act 49. That's where it's situated.
I'll do my homework a little better next time. Usually I just research the person, but next I need to research a little bit more than that. Huh? All right. So we're going to jump here into the last segment and wrap things up for the viewers tonight, and just start talking a little bit about reflection, because I think, and as I've grown as an educator and talked to other educators who are top end that I respect, I think reflection is an essential element. It's really in any profession, but in education probably even more because of the variables called students who come through your door every so many minutes, depending on what your schedule looks like. Is there time, and you kind of talked about this a little bit, and you mentioned the structure, but you build the time into the day for teachers to collaborate. But what does that structure look like? How are you structuring that? Do they have an agenda? Do they have an outline? Do they have to report back? What does that look like on the teacher's end of things?
Mm-hmm. So that's tricky, Todd, because that's where we talk about tight and loose and getting it right. Mm-hmm. You have to be tight enough to make sure we're all moving in the right direction, if you will. And I'm going to use that word right very loosely. Mm-hmm. But yet if you just say, here, go collaborate, then that's way too far the other side of the pendulum. So yes, they have an agenda, but they're supposed to set their own agenda. Hmm. We gave them I think we guided them much more in September and into October than we do now. Mm-hmm. So hopefully they've gotten to the point where they are creating their own agendas. We've given them that structure to work on: plan, do, check, act. There's a reflection piece in there. But I think reflection's tough because I think we're all so busy. And like you said, if you're in a secondary school, that bell rings and 3 to 4 minutes later, you've probably got another group of 30 students in front of you, and not time to sit down and say what worked, what didn't work, why did it work? Why didn't it work? So reflection is very, very important. And I don't think that we often take time for that. You know, when you study school systems in other countries, they have a lot less time in front of students and a lot more collaboration time. And I would imagine time to reflect on what's working when they do lesson study or what have you. American schools were very different. We're very, you know, there's 8 periods in the day, you teach 7 of them, or there's 8 periods a day, you teach 6 and you have a duty, whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. So that goes back to why we as a district added collaboration time. For our elementary teachers, it's in the morning. For our secondary teachers, it's in the afternoon. But that's a dedicated time where they can collaborate and work towards improving student achievement and to grow our students.
Mm-hmm. I would almost challenge too that reflection in often case is a skill that's probably tough to learn, especially as a young teacher. I mean, I look at my reflection practice now as personally, and you know, what I'm able to do now reflective wise wasn't happening in my first 5 years. And it's almost a skill that we as a district sometimes, or leaders sometimes, probably need to teach. Would you agree with that?
I think your teacher induction program would be a great place to try to foster that. Having good mentors. I think sometimes the secret sauce, if you will, in hooking a beginning teacher and a mentor teacher up is helping the mentor teacher understand their role and responsibility with that new teacher. Too often we just match people and say, go do it, and don't really provide insights and roles and responsibilities and expectations for our mentors. But you're right, that would be a great way to help the younger teachers is to purposefully put that into an induction program.
No, I like that. Brian, you want to take the last one and then I'll close it?
Sure. That collaboration time, that mentoring, you know, is a real commitment by a school district. You know, because time that teachers aren't in front of students, quote unquote, you know, is a commitment. You know, how do you sell that story? How do you sell that emphasis on teacher collaboration time, teacher reflection to the community? Are there any specific ways that you do that? And if you don't, can you just talk about it in general? I know you talked about how Chris does some of his social media, but are there some other ways that you or the district use social media to get your story out?
Mm-hmm. So I heard 2 questions there, Brian. I think the collaboration time was certainly something that we had to educate. We had to start with our admin team, educating them, our teachers, you know, our school board, and then our parents, because I mean, it was a big shift at our elementary school to say, you know, the teacher day starts at 8 o'clock and students aren't permitted in the building till 8:45 because that 45 minutes of time is collaboration time. You know, that had an impact on buses and routes and parent drop off and whatnot. So we worked very hard and for a very, you know, for over a multi-month period, if not a year, to really put that in place.
Wow.
So that would be one thing. The other part, and I think from looking at your notes, you've probably talked about this in another week prior, but if you don't tell your story, someone else will, and it might not be the story you want to be told. So again, Twitter, Facebook, I guess Instagram, I'm not up on that one, and I guess that's the next one I need to learn. You've got to be in good with your local newspaper. You've got to educate sometimes your beat writers as well, so that they understand what's going on in a board meeting. Again, just, you know, I mentioned superintendent has really captured the use of video now and putting video out on social media. And again, if you don't market yourself, if you don't tell your story, if you don't brand yourself, you'll get varying factions on Facebook or whatnot, and they might not be portraying the district the way you want to. So you've got to be out in front with your message, putting those pictures out, talking about the great things that are happening in your classroom, to combat the negativity and the story you don't want, real or not, the story you don't want people believing is what education is about in your district. So tell your story.
That's a little bit about that perceptual data that you were talking about earlier, and those 4 buckets that we know that we can call data, but really perception oftentimes is reality. So yeah, thank you for that answer. Ty, do you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, Lori, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and that was great. I love talking about that, and what you're kind of describing at the end kind of reminds me of, like, it's almost like a social bank account. You gotta make a bunch of deposits so that when the negative, the withdrawal, if you will, happens, that you don't go bankrupt, and so I really appreciate that, and I so appreciate all of your candor tonight with us throwing questions at you and sharing your district story. It was such a powerful learning experience tonight. And I can't wait to hear about your about that committee. I want to write you and let you hear how it goes. Maybe in 15 months after I'm going to mute here. I hear myself. Maybe in 15 months we've gotten through it. I want to hear about that, because that was a great story, and that seems to have so much potential. So thank you so much for being with us tonight.
You're very welcome.
So everybody, we're going to follow this episode up with our Twitter chat on Thursday night, Eastern Standard Time. First time goes out. Questions, 15 minutes, all based on tonight, with passion projects, collaboration, and professional development being the focus. And we hope that you'll join us. And then next week, final episode of season 2 of our MOOC with co-author of Hacking Leadership, Tony Sinanis, will be joining us. Joe Sanfilippo says he might join us too. I'm going to check with him, since we did have a date change. Maybe we can get them both on at the same time. But if you've not seen Tony speak, he is just phenomenal, insightful. His background is in elementary education, so watch out there in the elementary school. He has some insight from his experience as elementary school principal, and now he's worked his way up to the superintendency in New York as well. So we'll talk to him on Sunday at 5 o'clock. You'll see that on Twitter and Facebook. But in the meantime, Thursday night, join us on Twitter chat, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And thanks again, Lori, for being with us, and my co-host, Brian Robinson. Thank you for being on tonight with us as well. So good night, everyone.